This is Ham College, episode 64 for April 30th, 2020. Ham College is brought to you by ICOM and the new revolutionary IC705 with optional multifunction backpack, and by hamstudy.org, a great way to study for your next amateur license exam. Welcome to another episode of Ham College. I'm Professor Thomas.
And I'm Dean Martin.
And it's good to be back with you again tonight. Boy, tonight's show is going to be a little different than actually we had even intended before we started recording tonight. This was a pleasant surprise. We thought we would have someone come on and talk for 10 minutes, and he was just so interesting we wouldn't let him go.
Yeah, kept him for pretty much the whole hour.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting hour.
It is. And before we get into it, though, let me mention AmateurLogic.TV/chat. You know, anytime we're doing a live stream, you can go right there and check in with everyone there and just, you know, like kind of play with the pencils on the bench or whatever you want to do there during the show. There's people having a good time in there. And what do you always say?
Yeah, if you're in the live stream and you're not watching on the chat, well, that's not what I always say, is it? If you're watching the live stream and you're not in the chat, you're missing half the fun.
Yep.
But it's up to you to what?
To determine which half is missing.
Which half?
Okay.
That's all on you.
Yeah. If we're not streaming live, there may not be much activity in there. Probably not. But there's a good time going on in there during the shows.
Well, you know, some things are changing because of this whole pandemic deal. And the FCC made a statement about remote testing. And so I decided it'd be interesting if we talked to Richard Bateman, KD7 BBC. He was instrumental in creating some of the software that they're using for that.
All right, let's do it.
Richard's from hamstudy.org, and we thought we'd try to bring him on this evening. You know, there have been some changes with the FCC and the VE testing with the virus stuff that's going on, and they recently approved remote testing. And Richard had a hand in that, and thought it would be kind of interesting to talk to him for a few minutes. Appreciate you joining us, Richard.
Happy to be here.
What role did you play in the remote testing stuff that's going on? It's just getting started.
Well, so first, I'd like to clear up a really common misconception, is that, like you just said, that the FCC has recently approved remote testing. Actually, that rule change happened in 2014. So it's actually been legal for quite a while. The difference is that there were just not any approved methods of doing it. Well, Anchorage VEC has been doing it, and ARRL actually ran a couple in a different way. But the rule change actually went in quite a while ago. I've actually talked to Larry Pollock at W5YI about it a number of times over the last 5 or 6 years. But what kind of happened that got all of this started, as far as my involvement, is with all of the people that were kind of anxious to have a way to continue doing testing while they had the coronavirus stay-at-home stuff going on, sort of started banding together and creating some groups. And I got drawn in from a couple different directions on those. To be honest, at this point, I'm not even sure I remember all of the different kind of vectors that pulled me in. But we ended up creating a Basecamp group where I think there was somewhere around 30 to 50 of us that were just all kind of brainstorming about how to do this. And we broke down the problem of what the really hard parts were. And what it turned out was that what most people were thinking were the really hard parts are basically not the really hard parts. There's stuff that software I wrote 6 years ago does that we've been using for in-person testing. The hard parts were figuring out things like video conferencing in such a way that you can prevent cheating and properly monitor it as per FCC regulations. And paperwork is actually a much more difficult thing than you would think. And that's actually probably the biggest time suck right now is the paperwork. And I've been working pretty much 16 to 18-hour days for about the last month trying to update my software to solve some of those problems. But at the same time, there's a whole group of people that mainly at this point are using a Discord server. You can find a link to that on blog.hamstudy.org. And there are people who are doing remote exams every day, have been for close to a month now, and just refining the process, improving it, finding better tools. The examination is kind of the easy part at this point. It's finding the way to coordinate everything and the scheduling and the paperwork and getting the signatures and everything.
Okay, so this is actually going on full bore right now.
Well, full bore in a limited number of groups, mainly because it's extremely time consuming right now.
Okay, so which VECs are you aware of that are already doing this? I know the W5YI group is for sure.
So as far as we know, the first fully remote amateur radio license exam was the one that I did on, I believe it was March 26th. And that's the one that kind of blew up all over Twitter. And that was done under W5YI, and he actually participated in the video conference so he could see what was going on. And then after that, it didn't take too long before GLARG got involved, and they've probably actually done the highest number of remote exams. They've gone for some weeks that they basically were doing 10 to 12-hour days of remote exams back to back. And ARRL is actually officially using this. They've released a couple of different announcements lately talking about the NE1AR group, who's using our software, and that's kind of not as tightly associated with our group, but connected into our group. And we've been talking with some other VECs, but nobody else has been willing to commit to it. I've tried to keep all parts of the initiative that I've been involved with kind of VE agnostic. I feel like these are tools that should be made available to whoever is willing to use them. And you have very interesting kind of different characteristics of VECs that make things difficult more difficult for some to adjust in these kinds of ways than others. ARRL, for example, released an announcement that many people took to mean that we don't have any remote exams. We have no plans in doing any remote exams, and we will never do remote exams. And on the day that they did that announcement came out, and I don't remember exactly what the wording was, but that was how a lot of people understood it. The day that they released that, there was a remote exam pilot going on from an ARRL team approved by Maria Sama, who's I'm probably mispronouncing her name, but who is the head of ARRL VEC. And so ARRL VEC themselves have actually been very interested, very supportive. I think it's such a big group that the news and the understanding and the organization is not always kind of coherently making it from one place to another. And they're still trying to narrow things down and kind of nail things down. Because the one thing that we don't want to do that could happen is if everybody just jumps in and starts trying to do this without taking the thought and the planning and everything that those of us who have been doing it have done, we could end up with the problem that a lot of people have been concerned with, that it would cheapen the kind of the examination procedures and negatively impact the I'm not finding the word. The integrity of the exams.
Yeah, you definitely want to be careful with that. Yeah.
And that's, we've spent a lot of time thinking about things, and there are actually we've got an entire, they're drafts, so they're still going undergoing revisions, but we've got, I think, 3 different kind of manuals written up at this point, one for the applicants, one for the volunteer examiners, and one that is specific to using Zoom and some of the tools that they've found with Zoom that they've made it possible to do a little bit more, improve the throughput and the scheduling of the system using some of the Zoom stuff. But we also, we're not tied directly to Zoom. We're not tied directly to Exam Tools is currently the only software that we've got that gives the exams. But the procedures could be done with other software if somebody else had software that solved all the problems.
Sure.
So I've got a question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, it just occurred to me. So I'm assuming it logically the VE can only test one person at a time. You can't do multiple people like at a traditional exam session. Is that correct?
So right now, that's at least mostly correct. So there's kind of this realm where the trouble with practice and theory is that in practice they're the same, or in theory they're the same, but in practice they're not. You can tell I've been up too long for too many days in a row coding. In theory, you could probably have. I think you could at least have each VE monitoring 3 applicants and have it with a total of 9 going at a time. So kind of each VE has primary responsibility for 3, and if you could see them all, you probably need a large monitor. While they're actually taking the exam, I think that's probably plausible. That might be a little too much, and we'll have to do experimentation if we can ever manage to find software. But that's the challenge, is that in order to do this properly, you really need to be able to see not just a webcam, but their full desktop as well. So we have them share their desktop, we have them share their webcam, and then you do a 360-degree look where they have to show the front of the computer. You have to see everything around. It needs to be in a room that has a door that can close. If anybody comes in the room during the exam is invalidated and they have to start over again. That's kind of as per VEC decisions. But you can't. There really isn't any video conferencing software that we've found so far that can do that in such a way that you can actually have multiple applicants on the video conference at the same time, on the same video conference. Because even, some of them will let multiple people share their desktop, but then they could see each other's desktops, and you can usually only see one at a time, so you can't see them all at the same time. So in practice, we have in some cases managed to have one person monitor 2 or 3 different things at a time if they're not the main one running it. And they do that by actually using multiple devices, usually. Like they'll have an iPad over here and a laptop here and a desktop computer over here. And if you can join 3 video conferences, then you can probably monitor because, you don't have to be staring at the same person the whole time. Trust me, I've now done this, and staring at somebody's face for 25 minutes while they're taking an exam is really difficult and awkward to do. And you would be shocked at just how difficult it is not to let any hints as to how they're doing show on your face. So we've had to turn off our own video while doing that. So in an ideal world, I'd love to see much better video conferencing options, and I may have to develop them once I finish these other higher priority things. There's some open source projects that I think could be adapted to give us that. But with what we have right now, what you just said is pretty much correct. You can pretty much have 3 VEs handle 1 applicant at a time. And so what the more successful and ambitious groups have done, like there was actually Glarg ran a session the other day where they had somewhere around 37 to 40 applicants who took the test in one day, in one session. And the way that they did that was they were utilizing Zoom, and they had breakout rooms. And so they'd have somebody come in and somebody would assign them to the room, and they discussed in another chat window so that they'd know where to put people in order to let them get through things as quickly as possible. But it's still a very kind of awkward difficult process to do just because of all of those logistics. And then you get to having to get the signatures on the 605 form. So right now, I think most of them are using Adobe Sign because they have a 90-day trial, and I'll have digital signatures built into our software long before that runs out. But that means that you have to put the 605 in, and then you've got to set where the signature fields are and send them to the applicants to get signed. And then, it's like those, digital signatures are a very common thing. They're not complicated. They're not hard, but they're not really, the systems aren't really designed to collect that many signatures from that many people in a rapid way. And then to get them all back together and put them together in a way that you can digitally send those to the VEC. And, so it is actually a very effective process, and it's working great. And if there are any VE teams who want to join, blog.hamstudy.org, currently the most recent blog post there at the top, there's kind of a list of steps. And I've been trying really hard to get out of the way of all of that. And so there's a team of people on this Discord chat server. Discord, for anyone not familiar with it, is kind of like it's similar to Slack, like a new IRC. And there's people there who can set you up. We've got a sandbox site that's a different database, so you don't break anything if you make mistakes and stuff. And they can give you access to that and teach you how to use it. And there have been a lot of people joining and getting up to speed over the last week, especially. People are very anxious to do this. So it's coming. It's going to be bigger. Honestly, to me, I'm just as much excited about how these changes are going to affect us once we can go back to doing in-person exams as well. I think having the option to do remote exams, even if we don't usually, is going to be great. But just as important to me is having the option. Finally, we've got VECs who are allowing us to do digital signatures and do all the paperwork digitally. That's something I've been wanting to do for 10 years. And we're getting some more widespread acceptance of this software through the need to do remote stuff. But it's all going to benefit just as much all of our normal processes moving forward as well. So honestly, to me, that's almost more exciting.
Yeah, that's very cool. So everything is done remotely. The VEs can do it from their home. Every tester is from their home. Nobody has to come together at all, right? That is so cool. And your software, you wrote the software that's handling the testing itself. Is that right? Which pieces did you guys create?
Yeah. So kind of a little known fact. A lot of people know about hamstudy.org, especially if they watch this podcast. But I actually wrote exam tools before I wrote HamStudy. I got permission from W5YI to build our own examination software because we wanted our test session. We have a lot of people coming through and relatively few VEs. And my father-in-law runs our local session. So we wanted to improve that. And I got permission to build my own software for that. And so I built that first. And then it's like, well, I've already got this testing software. I may as well make practice test software. And it, grew from there. And then I've kind of gone back and forth between the two, building the software. But the current examtools.org software, which is what we're using for administering the tests, was written as a exam session management piece. And it was intended to be an in-person system. So it is web-based, but the intent was that everybody's there in person. The VEs, in fact, one of the challenges right now is that you have to remote control their computer in order to put in some passwords and stuff. But these are passwords that change every session. So it's, keyloggers aren't a real concern there. But yeah, so it's got computerized tests. And then the software also actually even supports grading with a camera, like with a bubble answer sheet. And so it's intended to manage an in-person exam session, tracks manifests, generates the 605 forms pre-filled out and everything. It verifies phone numbers, helps people. It's got an online registration system on hamstudy.org/sessions. And so we already had all of that. I mean, it's been there for years. I've been trying to get people's attention to look at it, and mainly only W5YI has really given me the time of day on it.
But now you've got their attention.
Now I've got their attention, and so I'm not sleeping because I'm working on fixing all the problems with it that weren't important 2 months ago. But yeah, so it's like everything to do with managing the exam. That's all in exam tools. And the parts that are not there right now are anything that is very specific to remote. So we don't currently have the digital signatures piece in, although that is coming. I'm hoping within the next week or two. I'm actually hoping sooner than that, but we'll see. And if I'm able to do everything that I kind of dream of, I would like to have a video conferencing solution all built in as well, and just have that all kind of an integrated thing. But exam tools is intended to be just a tool for managing an exam session. And so it worked out very well for remote testing because, it's just web-based. So as long as you're able to do the other parts, you use whatever video conferencing solution gives you the tools you need. You could probably do it with Skype. I'm not totally certain of that because I'm not certain if you can share desktop and video adequately well. And we strongly recommend recording them as well, just so that if there are any concerns with the integrity of the exam, that way you can go back and review it, or if the VEC can review it and such. But I mean, really, when it comes down to it, if you follow the processes that we've developed, and when I say we, I'm probably taking credit for a lot of very hard work from other people in that group that you can find on that Discord server that I was talking about. I honestly think that the procedures are actually it actually has better integrity. It's more verifiable than most in-person sessions. You've got, fully random exams, a different exam for every applicant, which is something that most exam sessions don't have. You've got full records. You know who started and stopped each exam. You know exactly what questions they had. You can go back and check all of that data, and it's all already digital. And so if I can get the VECs to give me the interfaces that I would need to do so, the goal is to have it to the point that we can digitally submit the exam sessions straight to the VEC. No paper has to be sent anywhere, and it just sent immediately. And most of that is done. It's just a question of kind of cleaning things up and wiring things together.
Oh, cool. I know we're running kind of short on the time that we had with you, but how can people find out who's giving sessions? Is there some type of a schedule around that you know of, so they can get started with remote testing? So a lot of people have been wanting to get their ticket and haven't been able to go right now because of it.
Well, I wish I had better news. The good news that I have is that you can find all of the remote exam sessions. You go to hamstudy.org and click on the session find session button in the top right corner, or just hamstudy.org/sessions. And any sessions that are running with exam tools are going to be listed there. That's the good news. Now, the bad news is that our most successful exam session, which took all day and involved something like 10 to 15 different VEs. No, I think it was more than that. I think it was more like 20 to 30 now that I think about it. Only managed to handle like 37 to 40 applicants, which means that even with more people, ramping up, until we can improve, get this new version of the software out and really improve the throughput on this, the exam sessions are going to fill up really, really fast. Please read the descriptions on those. Please, they'll say if they are accepting applications. And the biggest frustration that I'm getting back from the VE teams who are currently doing this is that people don't read the instructions. And so they'll sign up without scheduling, or they will sign up when it already says this is invitation only. I mean, people are so desperate to do this. They're just like signing up with everything, hoping that one of them will work. And the main thing that they're accomplishing is they are slowing down everyone else because they're just creating noise instead of working with the session that the system that's being put in place.
Well,
go ahead, George.
Yeah, I have one more question. Someone has asked me, and this was, I can't remember if it was Nigel or or who asked, but someone from out of the country. You know,
It was Nigel.
Yeah, you can go to a U.S. military base and take an exam for an American license. You know, right there on a military base, and he did that in England, and he was asking the question, will that be possible for people in other countries to take a remote exam? Now, I know you probably don't know the answer to this, but I was just going to throw it out there because it was a question someone had asked.
This is actually a question that we've been asked a lot. So it is, I know a lot about it. I'm not sure if the answer is necessarily known. So there's a few different challenges there. The first thing is that we're probably not going to be promoting that initially. And so just because, we're going to tend to want to prioritize all of the people here in the U.S. who are wanting to do it. Although I personally would make an exception to that for servicemen overseas. Point number 2 is that according to FCC regulations, you do have to have a valid mailing address in an area that the FCC regulates the license, the radio spectrum, in order to apply for an amateur radio license in the United States. So basically, you have to have a U.S. mailing address if you want to get a U.S. license. Now, there are a lot of ways that people can do that, but that is a requirement. And then the other thing, point number 3, I guess, would be that it will be up to the VECs how much they allow that. So ARRL, W5YI, GLARG, LARL, if they ever decide to allow, or any of the other ones. Those are the ones that we've talked to somewhat, although LARL so far has not been quite ready to jump on with us yet. But they will decide a lot of those details. But the other problem is that anyone who is in the European Union, I have not had time to go through and figure out how to fully comply with the GPDR. And so I cannot legally allow anyone in the European Union to sign up on my system, because if I did, then I would be in violation of all of that. And that actually brings up another interesting point that you don't normally think about, is that any children under the age of 13, I cannot legally collect their information without having a signed form from their parents because of the COPPA Act.
That's a good point.
So we've actually had to come up with a form on that. So there's a lot of, on these edge cases, there's a lot of really interesting problems that when you just think, online exams, that should be easy. And then when you start getting down into the details, there's a lot of places where we have to say, that seems plausible. We'll figure it out later. And that's the biggest thing with international exams. Very plausible, but we'll have to figure it out later.
From what you're saying, I was going to ask about hardware requirements for the remote testing, but I guess that really depends on the VEC group, the VE group, what they want to use for their video conferencing. So I'm assuming your testing software is probably any modern browser, Linux, Windows, Mac, whatever. Probably fine.
iPhone, right? Android. I mean, I don't think
everything.
I don't think any of us would be comfortable administering the exams on a mobile device remotely. But we've been using the cheapest Kindle Fires to give some of our in-person exams because you can kind of slowly build up enough of those to run an in-person exam session. So the software absolutely works on all of those. It's very low requirements because it's just a test. But the video conferencing, it depends on what you're using. And currently, I think most of the teams, if not all of them, are using Zoom, which means you need to have a computer capable of doing video conferencing, capable of doing video, capable of sharing your desktop. And you need enough bandwidth for that. I was talking to, now I forget his name, he's the head of the Anchorage VEC, a week or two ago about the difference in how their system works versus our system. There are a lot of things that the biggest difference is that they require a proctor to be on site. And you can read more about that, looking it up from them. I'm not the best person to tell you about how they do things. But one interesting point about that is that their video requirements are not as high. And so they can actually do their video stuff over a dial-up connection, because they don't need the high definition that we need in order to ensure exam integrity, because they have a person there to ensure exam integrity. So rural areas that don't have internet or don't have good internet may have a hard time with this. And also people who have a really old computer, it may be a problem. And I think over time we will improve things, but and for those who are criticizing Zoom in the chat, we are looking at different options. My personal hope is that I can adapt Jitsi to do not just the basics we need, but everything. But unfortunately, I can only work so many hours a day. I have barely seen my 2-month-old daughter in the last week, and nobody so far has stepped forward and volunteered to adapt Jitsi to our needs. If anyone knows somebody who would like to, I would love to talk to them. But so it's just a question of time, really. It's out of the bag now, and it's going to keep growing. It's going to keep improving. I personally don't think that this will ever replace in-person testing. But I think that it will be a very important addition to the tools that we have. And some VECs and some VE groups will be very interested in doing this, and some will have no interest in doing it at all. It's not a process that's for everyone, and it doesn't fit every case.
I could see it being great. I don't like you. It wouldn't replace in-person testing after all this stuff is over, but I could see it being great for people that are shut-ins. With health issues, not really the mobility to be able to go and do it. So that's pretty awesome for that. I think it'll just continue to keep growing and refining and getting better as time goes.
Well, and even just, I hear stories all the time of, oh yeah, I had to drive 4 hours in order to get to this test session. And, as nice as in-person communication is, and as much as I want to talk to people and have them invite you into the hobby and all of the reasons that in-person tests are good, after I've just driven 4 hours to get somewhere, I have no interest in talking to anyone. And, I really think that they'd be better off just doing a remote exam in a lot of those cases.
We'll be right back. Don't go away. This is interesting stuff. Get out and be active with ICOM's new IC705 and its optional multifunction backpack. The IC705 is your perfect QRP companion, as you have base station features and functionality at the tips of your fingers and a portable package covering HF 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs in at 1 kilo, or just over 2 pounds, with RF direct sampling for most of the HF band and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. 5-watt battery operation with BP272, or 10 watts with a 13.8-volt DC supply. Modes include single sideband, CW, AM, FM, as well as full D-Star functions. A large 4.3-inch color touchscreen, and live band scope with waterfall. Integrated GPS with antenna and GPS logger, micro SD card for data storage. It comes standard with the HM243 speaker microphone, and it supports QRP and QRP-P operations. The perfect accessory for the IC705 is the LC192 optional backpack, with a special compartment for your IC705 and room for accessories for soda activations or just a day in the park. Visit ICOMAmerica.com/amateur for more information about this and all the great ICOM radios. Well, we've been talking with Richard Bateman here from hamstudy.org, and he has given us some really interesting information tonight on remote ham exams and what the current state of that looks like, and, maybe where it's headed in the future. I know this has been really, well, as you said, it's been done before, but nothing on a scale like like's coming on here. And I think it's a great service that the VEs can offer out there. And I appreciate you and crew helping, kind of get this together and make it a little more manageable, a little less complicated to pull off. And I'm going to let Tommy ask you a few more questions there. And I'm going to look in the chat room, and if anyone's got a question in there, they they would like to ask, now would be a good time to ask it, and I'll gather those together. And we'll be back with those in just a moment. But Tommy, what have you got next there that was on your mind?
Yeah, well, we kind of touched base a little bit on it, and a little bit before the show actually started. But I'm curious about like cheating. What are the mechanisms to keep from cheating? You mentioned the camera. So they're supposed to just like spin the computer around so you can see the whole room, or how does that? What more of the details about how you would keep people from cheating? I'm hoping that's not a big problem. I wouldn't think it would be, but I'm sure that it happens probably on occasion. I would hope rare occasion.
So to start out with, that was probably the most discussed item at the beginning, is because there's long been this perception that there's no possible way, and it would just be way too easy to cheat on doing any kind of remote thing. To be honest, even I was kind of thinking that, initially when we started the conversation, I kind of started my response with, well, I've got software that can do the administration, but I don't know how you're going to ensure integrity. And we got talking, and the more we talked, the more I realized that it's not necessarily the level of problem that a lot of times we think it is. And part of the reason for that is that you have to start with the basic premise that it is never possible to entirely prevent cheating. In any exam session, whether it's in person or online, if somebody is sufficiently determined and sufficiently clever, they can find a way to cheat on the exam. That's just plain and simple. It's social engineering. There's always going to be a way. So once you accept that, which I think any kind of rational thinking person is going to have to, the question becomes, where is the line? What do we need to do? What do we have a responsibility to do? And so the line that we came up with is basically that our job is to make it difficult enough to cheat, that we're going to keep honest people honest, and that in general, somebody who is sufficiently capable of cheating would not need to do so. Because if they have the technical expertise they need to defeat the system, it's probably going to be easier for them to just study for the exam and take the test. Right. And so the basic process is to start out with, like I said, it's a controlled area. Your desk needs to be much cleaner than mine is. And then depending on your computer, for example, I can take my camera and I can look around the room, and we would look at a desk like this, and we would say, that is way too cluttered. You cannot do that. You need to have a clear table. But you'd look around and you'd say, okay, that door needs to be closed. The whiteboard needs to not have anything on it. You make sure that you can see the front of the computer, so that that there's nothing stuck on it. Now, in many cases, people may not have a webcam like this that you can pick up and move around. And so basically we've provided suggestions on how to do that, but we didn't feel like the process needed to mandate anything. So basically the requirement is that the VEs are able to see a 360-degree view of the room so that they know that there's no cheating materials on the walls, on the table. There can't be anything nearby electronic that they'd be able to use. They can't have headphones on, etc. And we need to be able to see the front of the computer. So if you're using a laptop camera, then you may need to use something else. For example, you could take your cell phone and put your cell phone in selfie mode, and then just hold that up to the computer and use it basically like a mirror. Or you could actually use a mirror. But there just has to be some way that you have of showing the whole area. And you could probably also connect to the Zoom session with a cell phone camera or something like that. Somebody in the chat mentioned that. As long as we can see well enough to tell that this isn't a recording, you're actually responding to stimuli, and that we can observe that it is a controlled area. Once you've established that the area is controlled, then it's really pretty safe, because once we're observing your computer, you can only have one one monitor connected. We can see the entire desktop. We can tell if you're doing anything else. Honestly, even you can really tell what they're reading, and you can see what they're doing. And as they're answering questions, I mean, if they kept looking down at a card, even trying to do it surreptitiously, you'd be able to see it. And, you only have to watch one or two of these to really get a very strong feel for, I could tell if this person was cheating, if they were doing something else. It seems when you're just thinking about it, it seems like it would be a lot harder than that. But when you actually do it, every person that I know who's actually observed the process, and that includes multiple, heads of multiple VECs. I know Maria and Larry have both been on at least one, multiple probably, and they've all said, I can't see any easy way that anybody could cheat. Is there a way? Yes, I'm sure there is. But it's not going to be simple. It's not going to be straightforward, and it's generally not going to be worth the trouble. And there'd be a high likelihood of getting caught in most of those cases, in really anything that I can think of.
Yeah, and like you say, I've been to enough regular sessions. Like I said, George and I are VEs as well, and usually at the Hamfest we at least try to work that one, if not some other ones, through the year. But you can tell if anybody's really got their head down and working on their test. The other question I had was, you mentioned that session with so many people took a long time, but like for the individual, if I wanted to come upgrade my license or get my tech ticket, what am I looking at time wise? Usually it's for like 20 to 30 minutes. There's no time limit, but average it's 20 to 30 minutes somebody's doing. I'm assuming there's maybe another 15 or 20 minutes of prep with the video conference and so forth, and getting logged in maybe. So looking at possibly an hour-ish test for the average person.
I haven't been closely enough involved in enough of the exam sessions to feel like I can really give a definitive answer on that. If you join that Discord, it's the Discord server specifically for volunteer examiners, and it is kind of, we've got a gateway. There's a gatekeeper on it, so you have to kind of verify that you are actually a VE or have other specific reason to want to monitor it. Like if you guys wanted to join, we'd let you in as an observer, since you have reasons to be informed on what's going on. There's a write-up on how they've used Zoom, and I suspect some of that information could be found in that. I would guess that the biggest challenge is just going to be around the scheduling, and that has been one of the hardest things, because when you're trying to process through so many applicants and your exam session lasts 10 to 12 hours, you don't want to make people have to wait the whole time. But at the same time, sometimes you have somebody who just doesn't show up. And if they don't show up, then you want to be able to process somebody else. Well, that doesn't work unless they're actually around. And so I think it kind of depends. It depends on the group. I would guess that the timing is probably very similar. It might even be shorter if you've already got, than an in-person test. If you're able to schedule it, if you're there on time and they're not running behind, and but like as far as the actual process, like once you start, if you've already got your video conferencing set up and you've got Zoom already working, you know what you're doing, it's really not a big problem. And most people actually test faster on a computer than they do on paper. And of course, grading is just like that. I mean, we hit a button, we type in a word, and it tells you if you passed or failed. And then most of the paperwork is all just taken care of digitally. So the 605 form would be sent for signature. Some of them are doing it before, some of them are doing it after the exam. And that's kind of the only other thing, but that can be kind of taken offline, out of band from the actual exam process. So there's a lot of things kind of up in the air. Once things are more stable, once I've finished the improvements that I've been working on, a lot of that is going to be cleaner, because like you will sign as part of the process. Like after you complete your exam, if you passed, you'll say, okay, click here to sign. Then you'll sign a little thing with your mouse, or I don't know, I may have decided what eventual improvements to that I'll make, but that's probably where I'll start. And then the VEs will basically do the same thing, where they'll just use a password to sign digitally. And then the 605 can just be generated on the fly from the data. And we'll probably do it in a way that it can be secured, so that we know, so we can kind of retain a cryptographic certainty that those documents have not been modified since the session was completed, or that if they were, we have a record of what happened. And so that's kind of the other half of that is this actually gives much more, increases the integrity on the paperwork side. The CSCE forms that we will eventually generate are going to have a way of verifying them, that you can actually look up the information and see, yes, this is the name on that form, and this is the license element that they got. And so you know that it's not forged, that it's actually a real CSCE. Things like that are going to be very easy to tie into it. It's just going to be a question of getting to it.
Yeah, well, that's pretty good. It's very interesting. I was just curious if it was going to be like an all day. I know you said some of it took a good while. I was just kind of curious about that, and I'm sure things will smooth out as they go farther. George, did you have any questions from the chat room? That's pretty much what I had.
Mike wants to know, VE3MIC wants to know, is a photo ID required? It's a good question.
That depends on the VEC. The requirement from Part 97, and I should remember the specific reference, but I don't right now. But it's something along the lines that we are required to verify your identification, and some VECs interpret that as you need two forms of photo ID, and some of them just say, well, you need some kind of verification. The exam team that I work with, normally, we generally require at least one type of government-issued photo ID, but then we make exceptions to that for minors who don't have driver's license. And so we'll accept other forms of identification. The actual Part 97 rules are very vague on exactly what they need for that. And so it just depends on the VEC that the VE team you're working with is working with.
And another question came from John, KC7DRI. He says he keeps hearing about looking away. He wants to know, what about scratch paper and calculators that you'd normally be allowed in person? Are those okay?
Well, again, it's going to depend a little bit on the VE team, but I believe the recommendations, which I should probably actually read one of these days, but based on conversations that I've had and input that I have provided, and on any session that I run, as long as you have, kind of shown the paper ahead of time that we know that it's blank, then the scratch paper is just fine. Calculator is going to be somewhat trickier. I probably would not allow anybody to use a calculator that needed to have memory cleared before it could be used, because it's just too hard to verify that online. Eventually, I'll probably just write a calculator into the testing software, so that if you need a calculator, you hit a button and it pops up. With the tests, the two test remote test sessions that I've run personally, I've been trying to stay out of that so I can focus on software. But on both of those, when they needed a calculator, I just suggested they use Windows Calc, because it's there. It has all of the functions that they need, and I can see exactly what they're doing, so I know that they didn't program it.
Yeah.
But that's going to be left mostly up to the VE teams, kind of their discretion.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so much of this, it all comes down to how the VE team wants to handle it. Sounds like.
There are some things which are sort of universal, that they're sort of, it's like, well, there are FCC regulations and generally accepted goals that these problems need to be solved and these goals need to be accomplished. And for the most part, we've tried to limit the kind of the procedures to solving those problems, but around those problems, there's a lot of things that are still left to, if you're testing with ARRL, you're going to have these requirements. If you're testing with W5OI, it'll be this. Identification is actually one of the bigger ones on that. So, I mean, there are certainly some things that get standardized by exam tools, since that's the software we're using right now. But even that, I mean, I would like to think that I can write software that's going to be as good as anything anybody else is going to write. But if somebody else were to come up with other exam software that people liked better, there's no reason that the policies and the procedures that we're writing should lock them into my things. I mean, our goal here is to bring people into the hobby, not to make exam tools the most popular thing on the internet. And as long as we are improving that, I consider my goal to be improving kind of how all of the license examination stuff works. Similar to with ham study, my big goal with that has always been to provide better tools, to improve tools so that people can study more effectively using, technology that we have available. And so even just the fact that the other sites that may not do as much as ham study have all had to kind of step up their game a little bit and come up with better tools to a certain extent, I see that as a big win for me, because even if they're not using my software, that's really what the goal was. And exam tools is the same way. I mean, some things are going to be standardized in the software, but wherever possible, I try to leave things so that they can be adapted, at least to a certain extent, to the procedures of the exam team. But sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not. And where it's not, the goal is always to provide something that will work. Yeah.
Makes sense. And one other question. This is from Emil. I think he's KE5QKR. I think he's trying to cause trouble, but anyway.
Not Emil.
I never have to talk to people like that who like to cause trouble.
He wants to know, what can you wear, like headphones with a microphone on them?
That is a discussion that we've had, and the general consensus, and I think this is a specific recommendation, is that we say no. Yeah. You need to find a place where you can be, where you do not need that. I'm using a Apple AirPods Pro for this because I wanted to have a microphone that could pick me up well. But if I were the one taking a test, there's just no way for the VEs to be sure that there's not some way that you're getting answers that way, So just said, there comes a point where you just have to say, you know what, we're going to inconvenience people, and there's going to be a line that we'll draw that we're not going to go too ridiculous, but that one is on the no-go side of the line that people involved with my group so far have drawn. At the same time, there's obviously nothing in the software which enforces that. So that is subject to VE team and VEC modification. But my recommendation would be no. And that in the process documents that we have is that no headphones with or without a mic.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't know how anyone would see what they're seeing on the screen to know to tell them A, B, C, or D, but yeah, I could see a potential that something you can't monitor could go on, and that's.
Yeah, well, there are ways that you could share somebody's screen, and if it comes down to that, I'm certain that there is software that you could find a way to put it on that would make it possible for somebody to even take the test for you while you're watching. That would be difficult for somebody in Zoom to tell. But here's the thing, is that if they have to do it, then there's a very good chance that the person monitoring is going to see that the answers keep changing and the person taking the test is not the one doing it. Like, it's actually pretty visible what they're doing. I'm sure if you worked at it hard enough, but there'd be a good chance that you'd get caught. And that's a problem that we're working on, trying to find ways to maybe detect, and we'll continue to do some more later. There are a lot of things that we haven't yet done that we could. But if somebody can talk in your ear, that would be a whole lot harder to detect. There would be ways of remotely monitoring the screen, and it's just it would be too easy, I think. My experience with people giving exams, and I have had somebody cheat on an exam that I gave. And what we found as we looked back at how that happened is that we set up too many things where it felt easy to him. He probably was a generally honest person, but a lot of people who are generally honest will still take a shortcut if they feel like there's no chance of getting caught and it would be easy. And so, again, it's kind of a question of just making it difficult enough to do that they're not going to do it.
Yeah. And
keeping honest people honest.
And something else that I happen to think of, that I don't know that we'll know this early because there just is not enough of this that has happened yet. But I wonder how people are scoring on their exams. Are they more comfortable sitting at home, taking the exam right there online, or is it about the same?
I don't have any specific statistics on that. I've done a possibly unhealthy amount of analysis on testing data over the years. Last year, I actually taking a machine learning class, and I actually wrote a neural network to analyze ham study history. It's not personalized; it's totally anonymized. I don't really collect enough information about anybody to do much with it that way anyway. But I was trying to see if there was a way that I could, based on your past study history, that I've seen on flashcards, can I predict how your exam will do? And I was able to eventually come up with a way to get a 1% improvement over just guessing on whether they would answer a question correctly based on and analyzing all of that data. What it kind of comes down to is that there's just so many factors going into all of that there's not really any way of drawing definitive conclusions about the data. For example, one of the big things is that will impact that right now is that most of the VE teams are very, very strongly saying, please do not sign up unless you are certain you are going to pass. In fact, a few of them are, and this is not I did not put them up to this. In fact, I told them I wasn't sure I was comfortable with it, but they are actually requiring people to show them a screenshot from their hamstudy.org study history showing the aptitude graph to show that, and they wouldn't let them sign up for the session unless they could show them enough study history that they felt comfortable that, yes, you really have studied enough and you're ready. And it's like, if you don't have that, well, go take 10 practice exams. And if you can show me that history when you're done, then we'll let you in. So, a lot of them, there's just a real focus on, since this does take so much time, let's not waste any of the time. And so the pass rate has been pretty high but whether that's because people are more comfortable or just because the people who aren't ready, who might have tried otherwise, didn't try is more than I can say.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point there that this takes a lot of effort from the VE teams, and they just don't want random people dropping in who haven't studied and are not ready to take the test because it's a lot of their time. Yeah,
it seems like it might be a little bit more effort on their part to do it this way than to do it the old paper way, at least at first, until they get the hang of it.
Well, you got it.
Yeah, I'm honestly, even once everything is kind of at the ultimate point. If everything that I have conceived of that I think is possible to build, if all of those software improvements are done, and we have, the video conferencing is all built in, and we have all of the control I want, and you can monitor maybe up to 9 applicants at a time with 3 VEs, which I think is probably the upper limit of what's reasonably possible, and that would require a lot. Even if you had all of that, and it's still not going to be as fast as doing in person, because in person you start 20 people at a time. Even with our session, we have maybe a limited number of computers because we normally use computerized exams. But if we run out of those and people don't want to wait, we just hand out papers and use the GradeCam integration and scan the bubble sheet. So you can always scale up with in-person exams, but there's just that hard limit where you need more VEs, and the process just continues to get, after a point, exponentially more complicated as you try to add more people in it. And so, I mean, there's always going to be a point where, unless they change the regulations on what is required for monitoring, that it's just not going to be as efficient. It's not going to be as fast.
Yeah. And that's okay. It's filling the niche need that we need right now. And most of us that went ahead and got our VE credentials or didn't do it for fame or fortune. We did it because we want to help bring people into the hobby. And if it takes a little bit more time, then that's okay.
Yep. Well, Richard,
I really have to, I have to give a shout out to Naomi and Norm Goodkin of Glarg. Those two and their family they're the ones who spearheaded that session I was telling you about. They have been spending like 12-hour days just testing. I think they've gone through hundreds of applicants in the last few weeks, more than anybody else has. Wow. So I mean, you're talking about kind of a labor of love. That's what they have been doing.
A lot of effort. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Are you new to the ham world or an existing amateur operator who wants to take your license to the next level? Study for your radio license exam at hamstudy.org. Hamstudy.org is a free online learning tool powered by ICOM. It was created by Richard Bateman, KD7BBC, Michael Stufflebean, KV9G, and Rich Porter, KK6GKE, and it uses a modern web design to enhance the experience of studying for your technician, general, and amateur extra exams. Since 2013, hamstudy.org has helped new and existing hams to familiarize themselves with the question pools, use stats-based flashcards to focus on material they need to learn, and take practice exams to gauge progress. Visit hamstudy.org on your desktop computer or mobile device. Register for a free account at hamstudy.org to access personalized study history and other site features. Prepare for an exam in an intuitive and comprehensive manner. Check out hamstudy.org, powered by ICOM, for free learning tools. Good luck on your next exam. Richard, we really appreciate you coming on and doing this tonight. I know it was sort of spur of the moment. Tommy contacted you earlier today, and I know you don't have time to do a lot of interviews and stuff like that. You've got a 2-month-old baby there, so your wife's not going to let you play ham radio forever. You're going to have to spend some.
She has been licensed longer than I have, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
But I do want to see my wife and kids again, so I really do want to get the software finished. At least this next main version, so I don't feel like everybody in the nation is waiting on me.
Well, we appreciate your efforts and everything you guys have done for a ham radio for the hobby, hamstudy.org, and the exam tools, and this last effort here. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate you inviting me on. I have been trying to avoid these, but it's good to just get some information out there. So hopefully this will help clear up some of the confusion that there's been.
All right.
We ran a little bit over the 10 to 10 minutes, so appreciate you hanging with us too on that.
Yeah. Can you give us a link where people can go to learn more about this?
Blog.hamstudy.org. We may post some other things soon, but it should be easy to find the post that we did about a week ago. It was kind of done as a press release, so it is heavy on kind of marketing terms, but there are links to the manuals in there. And at the top, there's information on how to get started with exam tools. We have kind of a sandbox environment that you can sign up. It's a full copy of Ham Study, but with totally different database, so that when you accidentally post your session, you don't have everybody signing up for it because it's not on the live site. And the people in the Discord can help you with that. They can answer all of your questions. Please don't email me about it. Please don't contact me about it. I'm working on other stuff. if you are actually with a VEC that would like to work with us, then please do contact me. I would like to have you on board. But if you're wanting to take a test, hamstudy.org/sessions or hamstudy.org and click find a session. If you're wanting to join as a VE, blog.hamstudy.org and join the Discord group, and they can help you with all of they know all of this stuff probably better than I do for the most part. And I monitor there too. So
Yeah,
happy to have you.
that is great. Yeah, we were looking at that earlier today, and that really will answer most questions people are going to have right there from what I saw. Well, once again, thanks so much for doing this, and we won't see you at Hamvention this year, but I don't know, maybe next year, we'll see.
Well, I told them to keep my my entrance fee until next year, and my flights were refunded with flight credits, so I'm going to have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yep. Same situation.
So, hope to see you there next year.
All right.
Yeah, well, we should. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks for having me. 7-3.
All right. 7-3, Richard. Boy, and you can disconnect there. There's Tommy. Wow, this did not go where we thought it would, did it, Tommy? I'll get your picture straightened out there.
That's fine.
This was much more in depth, much better. I mean, we had only planned 10 minutes, but boy, after we got into it, I told Tommy, I said, "Man, this is more interesting than a bunch of questions. Maybe this is what we should do."
Yeah, it worked out really great, and he hung with us. I know he's got a lot of stuff going on, so anyway, he decided to hang the rest of the time with us, and that's great. So we got a lot more things answered than the few I had prepared here, so that's even better.
Yeah. And if you've watched this and your friends are talking about the remote testing and got questions, well, tell them to come watch this episode. This was very informative. And, things are subject to change because this is still so new and almost groundbreaking stuff that I guess things could change. But it is a great effort on the part of the VEs who do this. I'm sure it takes longer per exam to do than having, 20 or 30 people in a room and testing them all at once. It's much more.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. But again, like I mentioned, nobody's, everybody's doing it because they care about the hobby and they want to bring new hams in and help them. And so I know personally I wouldn't mind if, a few extra minutes to get that done.
Yep. Well, so we're just going to skip these questions I had tonight because
so you guys got off easy in the chat room. No pop quiz tonight.
None tonight. I know I had promised that we would have questions, but we'll hold them for you for the next episode. I think everyone was thoroughly enjoying this. And let's see. Oh, one thing we did not do earlier that maybe we should do right now, because I've got sitting right here, right in front of me, an ICOM ball cap and an ICOM Ham Crew t-shirt.
Well, that's quite convenient.
That is very convenient.
It says it right there. Why don't we give it away?
Well, I think we will. And I just happened to check the address, Ham College at AmateurLogic.TV today, and this is the backside. I couldn't really tell. So.
Yeah, that's because you'll look just as good when you leave the Ham Fest as you do when you show up.
There you go. Well, I drew a winner from the entries that we had in there. And I got one from Todd Farrell, WE5TR. He said, 7-3, thank you. So congratulations, Todd.
Well, congratulations.
Whenever we do have Hamfest again, You'll be the best dressed ham there.
Yep.
And if you would like to win, because I think they have more caps and T-shirts, what would they do?
Well, they just need to send an email to hamcollege@AmateurLogic.TV and get your name in the drawing. If you send it this month or any of the previous months, you'll need to send it again this coming month if you didn't win, if your name wasn't Todd. So send it again, because we start with a clean slate every month.
Yep.
Get your entry in, and you don't really need anything but a name and an email address. If you want to write a little note on there, that's great. We love to read them, but it's not required.
True. So thanks, ICOM, for sponsoring Ham College. Couldn't do it without you. And, I haven't talked to Ray lately, but I'm going to have to check in with him and see how he's doing here in the quarantine. I see he posts something online occasionally, so I'm sure, just like everyone else, things are strange all over these days.
Yeah, thanks to ICOM and thanks to hamstudy.org for sponsoring.
Both, yeah. And we have not had that hamstudy.org ad yet, so I think I will need to slip that in editing somewhere. And hey, that was the guy right there. Richard Bateman, one of the main people with hamstudy.org. We've interviewed him before on Amateur Logic, and we're so proud that he would take out some time to join us tonight and clear up a lot of these questions people are having, and just, give us a good general update on where remote testing currently stands.
Yeah, and there you have it. That's the whole story.
Yep.
As it is right now.
And that's the way it was. Okay, we did have a number of questions tonight that, we'll just have to ask you these next time. You got off easy tonight. But
Well, we spared the buzzer, that's for sure.
that is for sure. Yeah, there were, I think, when I was asking for questions in the chat room over there, they were hesitant. Well, I know we had at least one person, I don't remember who it was now, wrote that they were scared of the buzzer. So they were scared to ask questions. But anyway, Tommy, what do you say we get together around, I don't know, the middle of the month and do an Amateur Logic TV?
Yeah, why don't we invite Emil and Mike, too?
That would be a good idea.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. We'll all get together and do another one. How about that?
Works for me. So,
yeah.
Anything else you got for tonight?
Good. No, turned out to be a really good interview. Got a lot of good information from that, so I'm glad it turned out the way it did, a little bit longer than we anticipated, so worked out perfect.
Yep. Okay, and once again, Richard mentioned it, but don't email him or try to, use his time right now to ask questions. Go to where he mentioned there. Was it
blog.hamstudy.org?
Was it blog or blogspot?
blog.hamstudy.org.
That's right. Okay. All right. Well, we really appreciate him being here and doing that this time around. And just a couple of things, maybe. Well, I don't know. We'll just mention them. I won't show the lower thirds here. But if you want to catch up with us during the month, where would you do that?
Well, we usually hang out. I can't see the lower third, but I know we hang out at the Facebook group, and we're also on Twitter at AmateurLogic and at Ham College. And where else?
Groups.io. It's groups.io/G/AmateurLogic. So.
Yep. And that's it. And no more Google Plus. So.
Yep.
I kind of miss Google Plus.
Yeah, I do sometimes. But I guess that's going to do it from here. I don't have anything else to add to tonight's show. It's just, it's much further along than I thought it was. I'll just put it that way.
What?
Remote testing.
Oh, remote testing? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm like got a big disconnect going because all I can see is a still image coming back to me.
It hadn't been that way the whole time, has it?
No.
Okay.
No, just when Richard left, it got like that. So
Oh.
I'll still see probably the last frame of that.
Oh.
Yeah, well, maybe it'll change with the next version tomorrow.
Okay. Well, I know you'll be glad when all this lockdown stuff is gone and you can start doing the nightclub shows again with the singing and all. So,
Yeah, I'll have to get out of the hot tub then.
yeah, probably so. All right. So we'll see you at the end of next month. The end of this month now. The end of May for the next time college. In the middle of the month for the next AmateurLogic.
Yeah.
7-3.
7-3, everybody. We'll see you next time.